Hey everybody, this is Charlie Dobbins. I want to welcome you to the next edition of the Masterclass Elite Group Coaching Call. And this time I'm very pleased to introduce to all of you and have him tell you his whole story, good, bad, and the ugly. My newest multifamily investor client, Steve Firestone. But before we meet Steve, as usual, I've got to do this as required by the Massachusetts Bar Council's office. I'm here to tell you that I am a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. Get a lawyer, and I think you're going to hear that why that's good advice today. So that's all. That's my entire introduction. But now I want to introduce all of you to Steve Firestone. Steve, how are you?
Good, good.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Charlie.
Welcome aboard to two things. First off, the call, and then to the world of multifamily ownership.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to finally be here.
Yes, and you have been working so hard to make this happen, which is so great. But let's kind of give everybody a little bit of your background. You and I met at my when I was doing a seminar with Duncan down in Atlanta, and I remember I was joking with you the other day. I said, yeah, so this guy sits down, he's got a British accent, and I ask him where he's from. He says he's from New Jersey. I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't compute. What's going on here? Why don't you tell everybody your background and give them an idea of how you got to where you are?
Oh man. Well, just I was brought up in New Jersey, and after a couple of years of college, actually, at the time, I was playing in a band, a rock band, and went over to England to help some friends' band out who were touring. Supposed to be for 4 weeks. I thought, yeah, great. I got no commitments here. I only own a guitar and a suitcase full of clothes. So I went over there, and 4 weeks turned into about 22 years.
Isn't that amazing?
It's just, one thing led to the other. The next thing after the tour was over, they broke up. So I thought, oh, great. I asked these other half of the band if they wanted to start a new band. That went on for 4 years, and then after that one, the next one, and before you know it, you just live somewhere. I mean, that's just, it wasn't a specific choice. But after a while, I got, fed up eventually with not making it in the music business.
Yeah.
And I just had enough, a lot of good tries, but I wanted to actually get paid for a change, for something. No more starving for my art.
Yeah.
So I fell into real estate by accident, really. Just bought something, long story, but I bought a condo with a girlfriend, and we had a grant from something, and next thing you know, I just loved it. I felt this passion for real estate like I did for, when I was first playing music, and over a very quick period of time, I was buying, with no money I started with as well, buying up condos and sort of condos, what you call them over here, we call them flats over there, and just apartments really, but single ones, and built up a little portfolio, was renting them out, fixing them up with my building skills, which I had none, and selling them on, and this and that, and then I kept growing and growing, and then I wanted to build stuff. This is a very condensed version, and then I got more involved in development, started again trying to teach myself everything I know. This is like 1995.
Okay.
There wasn't even, believe it or not, no books, all these books yet that are available. There was no TV shows how to do this or anything. So I got lucky one day. I was looking at a property that I couldn't buy, of course, but I was trying to learn. It was a development project to build a small apartment, like multifamily building out of another building
In England.
And these guys were selling it. I met this guy. It turned out, I asked a lot of questions. It turned out that he was CEO for some huge company in London. So he called me up a few days later and said, "Hi, you were looking at our building. I didn't really think you had any intention of buying that, did you?" I said, "No." He goes, "Do you look for properties often? Do you come across properties all the time that you can't buy?" I was like, "Yep." He goes, "Come into my office on Monday and talk to me and my partner, and okay, whatever." So this is like, at that time, I never worked for anybody or had a job or whatever, ever. So I went to his office, and he was like, okay, we talked, we chatted. Him and his partner were grilling me in like a more corporate situation. I'm sitting there like in some, silly rock and roll clothes, and he based still, and they basically said, okay, well, so I said, what am I going to do? They said, "Do you want to work for us?" I said, "Well, what am I going to do?" They said, "We don't know." And they just said, "We like your attitude. You seem really hungry, and we don't know yet, but how about this?" And we made a deal. They were like, "Okay, well, we'll give you a retainer, like 25 grand a year, and commission on anything that you buy, sell, rent, or whatever for us." And I was like, okay, why not? And I'm thinking to myself, this is amazing. What the heck's going on here?
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm going, yeah, okay, I guess so. And then it was like in the movies. It was kind of like, all right, kid, here's $100. Go get yourself a suit and show up on Monday.
And it worked.
And then I ended up this guy who was my original mentor took me under his wing, and I just really shadowed them for a long time, and he taught me everything in commercial property and retail, and they were buying redundant old buildings and building blocks of flats out of them, apartments, condos, whatever, and just everything. I started within a short period of time. I was like finding huge properties for them and negotiating on deals, you name it. And after about 3 years, I had enough. They wore me down. I worked too hard for them. Even though they had a big company with all these people, I was like the go-to guy, and everybody in the company hated me, of course, because I was like the shadow.
Yeah.
Who is this guy? Just comes and goes and gets paid. So after 3 years, I went out on my own, did some more building and rehabs and things like that, and they backed me, which was really nice, and I still talk to him this day. And now he's retired, and his company went public, and he calls me because he's jealous and wants to be doing what I'm doing instead of sitting in retirement.
Oh, that's great.
And he gets a kick out of hearing everything I do, and is still there for any help after all these years.
That's great. Now, so the market, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Market crashes, yep. You decide you want to raise your kids here in the States, and you and your wife moved back here to Florida.
That's it. I basically did it till 2008. Lehman Brothers crashed. It had the same effect over there, maybe even worse, because it was literally immediate. It was like almost no one knew what was happening before the day after Lehman Brothers crash. My 15-year relationship with Barclays Bank and track record was worthless. It was like, hi, so what's going on today? Who are you?
Wow. Yeah.
It was really like that. There was like all of a sudden in one day, no one to sell anything to and no one to borrow any money from anymore. And it wasn't, private money over there is not really a big thing. It's really like a track record with a bank.
Yeah.
And that's it. So there was end of an era, and I was a bit shocked. And luckily, I had made a fair bit of money to last for a while. I got married, had a couple of kids, and then I decided that was a good excuse to move back here, which I wanted to do. So we just planned that out over that time and moved to Florida, only because I had some family here, and decided to figure out how to get into real estate here, which I never really did over here, and it is a bit different. And it took me a while to figure out what to do.
Now, fast forward again to you and I meet in Atlanta. You sign up for my coaching program, and then we start working together. And I can tell you, I know when there are people who are going to get this thing done. And you were so adamant. Nothing was going to get in your way. You were constantly out there looking at properties. I had to rein you in a couple of times on some deals, didn't I?
Yeah.
So you got one under contract early on. I think, as a matter of fact, how we first started was that you had a deal under contract and then you signed up for my coaching program. Wasn't it like that?
No. It was what it was. First of all, I was trying to get into real estate here. I had no idea how. I was trying to do this fix and flip thing, and I thought this is crap or whatever. Yeah. And then I don't know how I found out about multifamily, and that was it. I was just like, I fell in love with multifamily, so I tried to learn everything I could. I saw something about Charlie's thing in Atlanta. I'm always skeptical about going to events and stuff a little bit, but I thought, I'll go check this out. Maybe it could be good. And I went there really skeptical. And as soon as I heard Charlie talk and saw how genuine he was and everything, and this is no plug, by the way. It's true.
I'm going to use it as a plug. You can be sure
He's
of that.
not paying me. I'm paying him. No. But he was just a really great guy. He really just taught it like it is, and the sort of intricacies of the due diligence and the stuff that you really need to know. And I spoke to him that in the evening after the class a couple of times, and it was just like talking to your friend, and it just felt great. And I thought, wow, this is great. I'm signing up, and it was like personal attention after that. It was great. And what happened was I got a deal. I was already had started trying to develop some relationships with brokers and stuff. On a smaller level, just working my way up there. And then about 8 weeks after the course, I had a property under contract in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Maybe even less. It was even less. And it was like stuck right in there. I was like, okay, I got a deal now. What do we do next?
Right. And this was the one where I think we wrote the contract in such a way that you didn't have to put up any earnest money until they turned in all the due diligence information.
Yeah, one of the biggest important things I learned very early on, and luckily we did that. No, the period doesn't start until you get all the paperwork.
Right, because what happened? It turned out that this guy couldn't produce anything.
Yeah, we got like drips and drabs of paperwork. This is a supposedly motivated seller. And after 3 weeks, we still don't have even half the stuff. Because you know why? Because they didn't have it.
Right. They had terrible bookkeeping, and it was such a way that you could never have taken that deal to a bank to get financed. You just couldn't have done it.
No, or for that matter, show it to investors because it was just a mess.
Yeah, exactly.
So I gritted my teeth, and I spoke to Charlie, and I just had to cancel the contract.
But it didn't cost you anything.
No.
Yeah, that was the nice part about it, and that's the way I like to structure those things, because you never know what you're getting yourself into. So why tie up your money?
Yeah.
So all right, so let's talk about this deal, and I'm going to tell me about how you found it. I'm going to switch over here. Let me see, switch programs. You're going to see what I'm pulling up right now. Tell me about how you found this deal that you ended up closing, Windview.
Okay. Well, first of all, it sort of led on from that first property. I was very excited, and I wanted to find another deal, and I learned a lot from that one early on. And of course, I went on from there, trying to find deals for many months, most of the best part of the year, and it wasn't as easy as that again. To get something under offer that quick or find the right deal, or whatever. So over that time, I just worked on developing relationships with brokers in all my sort of key areas and states that I wanted to be in. And, I made a lot of sort of buddies out of, various brokers who, the ones that grilled me and asked me what I own and were a bit more skeptical of me, which weren't that many, but they were. Those are the ones that I don't call back and be buddies with, but the ones that I right away got through to and they didn't question me, I started doing, the relationship thing, calling them back every few weeks, and just acting like they were my friends. And
you can
they never asked me a word.
I say it's a hoop jumping business. Sometimes you can jump through the hoops. Sometimes you just have to go around them. And if you can't overcome some, find somebody else.
And even in the same company, you're talking about some of these big broker national companies, even in the same office in the same town. There's like 4 or 5 different guys in there potentially. If I don't get on with one, well, next time I see something available that's got someone else's name in the office, and I call them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, the broker who I originally had this deal with, the very first deal, had something on right before Christmas.
Hey, wait, just so we said we're not mentioning any names, but is this broker's name that of a color? Okay,
yes.
Okay. So it's the same guy that gave you the deal that we tried to get done the first time. It fell through, but you stayed in touch with him and you kept it maintaining a strong.
Yeah, I tried to stay in touch with him. I was a bit more concerned that I looked bad because I pulled out, but in reality, I turned it around, which is what Charlie sort of told me to do. And I wrote him a letter telling him how he shouldn't have even had that on the market with the paperwork the way it was, and all this stuff. And I sent it, gritting my teeth. And he actually wrote back and apologized and said I was right, and he owed me one.
Isn't that great? I mean,
and I was like in shock. I said, Charlie, look what I got.
That's fantastic. I mean, you held the high road and came off looking like the professional, and you'd never done a deal. You'd never done a deal. Yeah, that's great.
So, long story short, this one came around. I did keep in touch with him, and this one came on it was on the market, but he called me and told me, have a look. These guys are really motivated. They want to get this under contract quickly. So I put two and two together. I loved it. Second I saw it, I thought this is a perfect 138 units, not too big, but not too small. I liked the way it looked. I thought it had potential.
Okay,
The numbers
tell
looked
me what you
interesting.
liked about it when you looked at it. Let's see if we can scroll through
Right.
some pictures here.
Well, by this time I had already looked at a lot of properties in Atlanta because that was my first market I was looking in, so I sort of knew it well. I knew that a lot of people didn't like the very south part of Atlanta, so this one happened to be in Stone Mountain, which is just north of the A20. So I thought, that's good. That's better location. Although it is a C property, it's still got a better location and an established area. So I like that. I liked the way it looked.
Yeah.
I thought it's got a good look to it. It had, I knew they were motivated. It had over $1 million worth of works that they had put in over the last 2 years, and it was actually documented.
Yeah.
So it was true. It was true, which came out in the due diligence. So they had already put all new roofs on. All the siding was redone. The parking lot was redone. They spent like 30 grand on the pool, which was a really, really nice pool, and they started upgrading some of the units. The downside was they had a fire there. They had 12 units down from a fire, which they never fixed. They took the insurance money and pocketed it. So they lost, and I thought right away, my wheels are spinning. I'm thinking, these guys just lost, by my estimate, $120,000 in gross income by not putting back online 12 units, and their expenses didn't go down. What's the problem here?
Yeah.
Oh, gee, we can't afford to run the property anymore. Let's sell it.
Interesting.
And on top of that, their insurance went up to $110,000. It's the best they could get.
Yeah.
So with all that happening, already they were on a loser. And there's nothing they could do. No matter what they spent on the building, it was too late. So they didn't bring it back online. They made a few other mistakes. They had a water issue too, which they didn't fix. There's a water leak there. Water bills are about, potentially 30% over what they should be. Just a few other things, that I noticed. So the numbers there wasn't an NOI,
Okay. So,
and which was a bit, I guess brave of me because that's not what you really learn to do.
right. So what you're doing is when you have no NOI, it's what we call a non-cap rate sale. It's a non-performing asset. So you were taking this thing over because it was because these guys just couldn't make a go of it. But you had seen the potential in this with some changes in the expenses.
Yeah, well, that's the first thing I noticed. Again, from learning from Charlie and Charlie's class and all that. You look there. The first thing I look at when I look at the anybody's P&L, I look down. I scroll down. I look at all the expenses. Of course, I'm more used to it now. And if anything jumps, any big numbers, I look over to see what it is. If anything jumps out at me that looks like holy crap, then I immediately want to circle that and want to find out about that. And what used to be at first looking at as that's not good, I don't want this, is now like, holy crap, look at that, the water's really high, it could be a good opportunity.
Yeah.
Or like their payroll's crazy. What? It's only 130 units. They got 10 people working there. Are they crazy?
Yeah.
So I look at those as opportunities now. So I look at that, and of course to see if there is, what the NOI is. Preferably, trying to buy something that's reasonably stabilized-ish, that people have put some money into already. And that there's a lot of value add to
I mean,
it. That's
the
what
place
I look
looks really good. I mean, it looks like it's a great asset that you can, make some changes on and make it happen. Here, you've done a nice job with the, value add strategies for your investors. Now, walk us through the LOI process. How did that go?
Okay, well, as I said, it just came on. The broker told me about it. I thought I actually had just fallen out of another property that I spent 2 months working on under contract with another person, and I spent a lot of time on it. It was a reposition project, and unfortunately, that was another one. I did all my due diligence and physical due diligence too, and it became aware that there was a very large amount of money in capex needed of things that weren't disclosed by the broker or the owner, and I tried to renegotiate literally on the 30th day of money going hard. It was even after hours. It was like 8 at night. And we were still back and forth, and the guy just wouldn't give in. And I thought, okay, I got to steel myself here and be hard. And I thought, I can't risk the EMD money, so because it's not mine.
Yeah.
I sent in the termination, and unfortunately, what happens a lot is the next day I did send it there saying let's carry on negotiating, after the weekend or whatever it was. And of course, what happens a lot when you pull out, it does sour the relationship, and the guy was all angry and thought that there was nothing wrong with his great property.
Yeah.
So that was the end of that. So I was a bit sad again and thinking, oh, here we go again. And then this just came along like within 4 weeks, just out of nowhere. So partly out of wanting to do a deal, and partly it just screamed out at me that it looked good. Broker called me, and my next thought was I thought, hang on a second here, this actually sounds like a good deal per unit price. Although it didn't have the NOI there, I know what's around there from all my research over the past year, and it sounded like a really good, potentially a good price. So I thought if I could just get this a little bit cheaper to have a little cushion. And I knew they were motivated to get it under contract, and I thought, it's like 2 weeks before Christmas. Are they crazy listing this 2 weeks before Christmas? Who the hell is going to look at this thing until after New Year's? So I literally put an offer in immediately, just to see what happened. And with a little bit of negotiations, they took it. They signed the LOI. I went straight down to look at it in person, and we went and we didn't actually finish signing the contracts till after the first week of January, because everybody started taking off for the holidays, as brokers, lawyers, and all that. But it was essentially LOI signed, and the contract started negotiations before Christmas. So I took advantage of that timing as well.
All right.
And then we got it under contract. And I just went to work on the due diligence after
Okay,
that.
now you had attended my due diligence seminar in LA, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and so how helpful was that?
That was great. I mean, that was just like a walk through everything you really actually need to look
Right.
at. And yeah, that was really
right. And so this is my shameless plug that I got my due diligence seminar coming up in Boston in the next month. So I tell you, if you're serious about this business, do you think you need to go to that due diligence seminar, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've read, just about every book there was to try to teach myself and learn stuff, but there's nothing like going, especially with someone like Charlie. He's, when you're there, it feels like he's a proper teacher, like he wants to teach you, like teachers should be.
Yeah.
And he walks you through every part of it, and he tells you with like anecdotes from different people who've done things wrong, or if it's something that he wants to hammer through to you, he really tells you got to do this, and then he'll say it over and over again.
And usually the anecdotes,
usually
the anecdotes all begin and end with me. Yeah, usually they're all stories about me too many times. So, all right, now the thing is, so you go through the due diligence process. You go through and you make the decision. Right, your money is about to go hard. Let's not talk about the financing end of it just yet.
Okay.
Let's talk strictly about the due diligence. When you had completed your due diligence, what did you learn that you needed to have adjusted, or was everything exactly the way they had described it, and there was nothing more for you to do on the physical due diligence aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I again, because I haven't really been 100% through the process, I was still a bit nervous, like, how do you do all this? And but we did it with the help of my wife too, who's of course now totally on board.
Oh, good. Yeah, I saw that check come in. She should
now
be.
She loves it. Well, she was just skeptical before, as I can understand. She didn't have my passion. She couldn't see, could he really do this? He's got money. He's going to buy $1 million buildings, and now she's, totally in there. But we got all the paperwork through immediately, which was scary because they had everything ready.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So it was like every single thing on the checklist, they made sure. Their lawyer was pretty hard as well, and everything was there. There was nothing. I couldn't find anything to buy some time.
Right.
So we had it practically the next day. So we started going through it. Me and my wife, we started going through everything. She's great at like, she used to work for a bank in the, international bank, in the sort of back office, doing
Operations.
I can't even remember. I always forget the word. Where you match up all the things to make sure that they're right. So she's used to things like that.
Reconciliation.
So that's it. Reconciliation. So she did a spreadsheet. We went through all the bank accounts, put down all the the income. And then we went through all the P&L statements and all that stuff, and it just all looked good. We were like a bit looking at each other like, okay, we're done. That actually is the same figure.
Oh, that's great.
And it took a long time. I mean, it wasn't 10 minutes.
Right. No. This is the heart of the due diligence. If you can't get past this part, don't even bother walking the rooms.
That's it. So we made a spreadsheet with all the utility bills, all the income, of course, the deposits, and whatever else. Of course, nothing comes out exactly to the penny,
Right.
but I mean, it was there. It was all there, and we were fairly impressed that it was very well kept. It was actually run by a really big national management company, so they had everything to hand, like it should be when you sell a property. And that took us a while. We were way ahead of the game. We tried to get everything done as early as we could, so we worked really hard to get that stuff done early on. And so from that point of view, it all checked out. And then, of course, after that was the physical due diligence. So I went down there. By this time, I had already had a management company who I wanted to work with, again, that I met over the year of me, making contacts. So we had a relationship going. So he was in on it at that point. His team went down and did a lease audit for me. Because obviously, if they're going to take it over, it's best if they do that anyway. Plus, I wasn't, it wasn't something I felt like I could do or wanted to do. So they charged basically, I think it was $15 a lease. So it was about, I don't know, $1,500 or something for them to do a lease audit. I thought, fair enough. But then they wanted like $25 a unit to do the inspections, and I thought, okay, that part I'll do myself, considering. I'm really not doing so well on funds here. I'm, all my big money I made before has dwindled. So anything I could save. So I did all the unit inspections myself. I made worksheets. I went through 138 units in 2 days.
But Steve, that's what I taught you in the due diligence is that, you can do the walkthrough of the units. You don't need to be an expert to do that, to spend $25 a pop. I mean, you do need those guys to go out and look at the roof and the HVAC and the foundation and the physical structure. But inside the units, no, those guys don't know how to look at a unit the way you as an owner needs to look at that unit. They'd walk in there and say, okay, yeah, the plumbing works and the electrical works and all the sockets work. But the way you need to look at those units is when you step inside and think to yourself, if I bought this property today and the people living here moved out tomorrow, what's it going to cost me to turn this unit? Is it in terrible shape? Is it I just need to steam clean the carpets? How bad are these units? And property inspectors don't look at it that way.
That's it. And also, I think there is a little bit of an art to it as well, because I started doing it and I'm thinking this is going to take forever, and then you get a sort of into a stride after, and a more of a way to do it, because you can't spend time in there.
No.
You're knocking on the door. You've got one of the people from the office with you. There's people in the apartments. They're not so happy, especially in like a C property. They don't exactly welcome you in and give you chicken for lunch.
Yep.
I mean, they're like, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
Like, we're just gonna have a quick look. We're inspecting your apartment for any problems. That's what we would say. So just a general inspection.
And we got it down to such a science that one person would be walking you through the one unit while the other person was knocking on the door for the next unit and having that one ready to go. It was just a cycle. You go in and out the whole time. So
that's it. And after a while, I realized you have to get this down to, and I mean this, to 3 minutes a unit maximum.
That's all it takes too. They're small units.
That's it. Once you get to know what to look for, but the first ones, I was writing too much down. I was almost doing over, trying to be over the top. And then I realized, well, actually, most of the things were okay. So what you do is write down the things that aren't
Yeah,
okay
yeah,
or need doing.
right.
So I would make a note whether it either if it had a new hot water heater and a newish one, or it was a 70s one.
Yep.
I'd make a note of that. Was it new or old? As meaning new, as in the last 10 years, something like
Yeah.
that, 5 years. And then I'd look at the flooring. Has this been upgraded in any way? Some of them had, light upgrades, lighting fixtures, flooring, things like that. So I made a note of that. Which ones had, which ones didn't, and which ones had newer appliances, which ones didn't. I checked for leaks under the bathroom sink, under the kitchen sink. Looked on the ceiling, see if there's any staining or any evidence
Exactly.
of leaks from that came through from the past.
Smell for mold.
And yeah, you look around, even when you look under the cabinets where the water is for mold, obviously if there's anything smells. And then also, on top of all that, what you're doing when you're in there is making a quick note of the tenants. I realize I would like, you don't want to go back later and do it. You make a quick note, 10, basically something like, the tenants, this apartment was kept nice.
Right.
The tenants keep it nice. This one, they're living out of plastic
Yeah.
beds, and they have no furniture.
And
So,
how many people are on the
notes.
leases, and how many beds do you see? And do they pay a pet deposit? And why is the cat walking
That's
around?
it.
Those types of things that you pick up on right away.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Pet things. I made a note. Whoever had a pet. I mean, there was probably 20 people had a pets and 3 people on the rent roll that were paying pet
Isn't that
deposits.
amazing? Yep.
Yeah.
So
So I made a note of that. And believe it or not, you can do you can do all this in 3 minutes
exactly.
once you get your head around it.
Exactly. So,
And next thing you know, you've gone through all these buildings and you're very tired.
all right. Now you're done the fun
And then you
part.
put it all on a spreadsheet.
Now you're ready to move into the financing component of it. Okay, so why don't you give us some numbers? What was the final agreed upon purchase price?
The agreed upon purchase price was, in theory, 3.65. But on top of that, I had a $250,000 repair credit that I asked for, which made it, 3.9.
Yeah.
So it depends how you want to look at it.
So about $28,000 a unit with the repair credit put in there.
28,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess you then went out to the mortgage companies. You went out to your mortgage broker.
Yep.
And how did that go?
It was more difficult than I thought.
Okay. Tell us what.
I had a few brokers. First of all, it had to be a bridge loan, of course.
Because it was a non-performing asset.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And not too far off. I mean, I from my pro forma and being conservative, like I was telling Charlie, another day about this, and I said it was all like all these brokers, the normal ones, not the bridge loan guys. They said, well, we can't really lend on it today or the day before you buy it, but the day after you buy it, because I had expense reduction starting from day one. They said, we'll lend on it then. So, you won't do it the day before I buy it, but you'll lend on it the day after. That's really helpful of you.
Yeah. Now, what's the occupancy?
Well, at the moment, because we had the 12 down units out of 138, so out of the 126 that were rentable, there was 85% of those, which basically give you a whole overall economic occupancy of something like 73.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Because of the
Right,
down units.
right.
So, it was bridge loan. And of course, I also made a full sources and uses list of how much we would need for everything and what we needed to spend there, within reason. I mean, just it takes a little trial and error to go see what other people spend on things or rule of thumb numbers or whatever. But I made a CapEx list of how much it was going to cost me to do the fire damage building, how much is it going to cost me to fix this water problem, how much, there's no playground. That's another thing that I loved. I always look for that. Guys spent $1.2 million on a property that's all 2 and 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, no place for the kids to play.
And they're surrounded by other apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And they don't have a playground, not one stick of equipment.
Wow.
So I thought, great. That's really necessary.
Yeah.
So playground, and whatever else it needed. Made a list of everything I needed, and added that onto obviously the project course.
Okay, now when you say a bridge loan, when you're talking a bridge loan, part of the problem that new investors always bump into is a key principle, and having somebody that will be able to sign on the dotted line that brings gravitas or weight to with their resume to the deal, so the bank will give you approval. When you're dealing with a bridge lender, is that even an issue?
Yeah.
I mean, so they wanted to see who you were working
Oh
with.
yeah, it was yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's more, but it felt like more because it was more risky.
Okay.
And just get Fannie Mae qualifying property. They're not that worried because they have strict rules about what they'll lend on. But when you're buying a bridge property, these guys, aside from that, they do it quicker. They don't do as much due diligence or inspection as the traditional loans. So they're taking more risk. Plus, they're risking that you're actually going to do the work and can turn it around. So yeah, they want someone with experience. So I had to find a sponsor, and luckily I met someone at Charlie's group. This isn't a plug. But it was actually in the first time I went there, and it was some great people there.
Yeah.
And we all went out to dinner. Everybody got to talk because it was a reasonable sized group. And one of the people that I met there, I kept in touch with over the year, and he intimated that he would possibly sponsor a deal for me if he liked it. And I sent him about 3 deals over the year, which he politely told me he'd get lost. And for various reasons, just not in a nice way. And then when I sent him this one, he thought, this is great, now you're talking. Okay, let's go. And he wanted to, we agreed a percentage, he was going to sponsor it. And
Now, how much money did you need to raise for this deal?
Altogether, $1.6 million.
Okay, now you obviously, from being a musician in England all those years, you have that type of capital that you could just write a check for, correct? No?
No.
Okay. And the thing is too that you didn't have any contacts either. You started from scratch in this business.
Yeah,
I mean, you listen. I tell you, I hear this all the time from people that how am I going to get started? Where am I going to find the money? I mean, for crying out loud, if Steve Firestone can do this, and I don't mean it in any disrespect, Steve, if you can do this, I mean, anybody can do this. You just have to get out there and work at it. And so how did it go raising the money? And this is, I know the answer to this story. And, why don't you tell, everyone on the call the good, the bad, and the ugly and how you pulled it off?
Okay.
Don't
Yeah, the good news was I had really good due diligence. That was nice. But the bad news was yet to come. So I needed a bridge loan. Just to finish on that note, we had I eventually went to like 3 different sort of brokers feeling people out because they all thought that they could get me a good bridge loan. It turned out the best they could get was 8% plus 3 points, and which wasn't the end of the world. I guess that's what I always thought was normal anyway for a bridge loan. But all these people are telling me, nah, we can get it for 5%. So I wasn't over thrilled, but at least we had that on the table. That's the best that anybody could get, and we were getting very close to, the
closing day.
The meeting. Yeah. So after I finished the due diligence, working on getting the financing sorted out, I needed to raise the money, that little thing, and I thought, okay, and that was my biggest thing that I was worried about, and should be.
Yeah.
So these guys just happened to call me that through some other people or sources that I know, and they weren't con artist type guys. They just conned their way into, they wanted to get in a deal and lied about how much they could do, but they didn't do it maliciously. They just thought it would be easy.
They had no idea what it takes to get a deal done.
No, but they were portraying themselves as, they could bring in the money. They had investors.
Yeah.
That was what they're saying that they do. So they told everybody and people that I know that are experienced that they conned that they had $2 million worth of investors lined up ready to go into a deal, and someone told them about my deal. They called me up. I thought, wow, this sounds really good, because I was so tired already from having done everything up to that stage myself. So I thought, okay, so I stupidly didn't really check too much, except that they were sort of recommended. So we made a deal for part of the management fee, management of the company, and I actually put them in the company, which probably wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, did you ask me?
And,
Did you ask my advice on that, Steve?
no, I
Yes.
didn't ask your advice on that.
Oh,
That just sort of happened, and they seemed like nice guys, and I wouldn't usually let myself get so fooled, but I wanted the easy way out for the money, and I really thought the way they were talking, it was no issue. So I was like, hey, man, this is great. Am I lucky or what?
yeah.
And weeks went by. We made all these brochures, put their name on it. They went out to a lot of people. I know they did, and I know they did a lot of marketing, but that kind of marketing doesn't mean anything.
Right.
They had gone around to events and got people to sign their forms, fill out forms or accredited investor forms or whatever. Like, hey, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Joe. Sign this.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what they thought meant that somebody wanted to invest in the deal. Just because they filled out a form for them saying they're interested in hearing about investments.
Rookies.
Yeah. So after a good few weeks, I'm starting to get a bit worried here. Weeks go by fast in this game when you're trying to close on a property. And I was biting my nails. It came down to getting close to money going hard. And they actually put up I made them put up part of the EMD money. Because just to show some commitment, and it wasn't a lot for them to put up, but it was still, I thought, well, it's only 15 grand. Surely, if they can't do that, then why should they think they can raise millions of dollars?
Why should they even be in your company?
Yeah. So it came down to it. Their money's about to go hard. They haven't raised one penny. As I like to say, these guys couldn't even raise an eyebrow between them, no less 100 grand or 1.6 million. So I started getting a bit, worried and confronted them. And actually, they came to me and started almost, and I mean this, almost crying on the phone to me, telling me that, they can't raise the money. We have to cancel the deal. We have to cancel the deal right now. We need our money back. We can't let our money go hard. And they were like freaking out for like 3 days in a row. And I just let them have it. I just couldn't hold myself, and I had the sponsor on the phone too. He didn't say a word; he just was listening and grinning, I guess. And I was just
Wait, was that the sponsor you met at my meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, good, yeah.
And so he's on the conference call with these two guys, and I'm going, stop acting like babies, act like grown men. You were hired and put in this, in this position to raise money. You said you could raise money. I didn't hire you to see if you could raise money. And I was giving him a real earful, calling them babies, and this and that. And basically, they backed out with their tail between. I said, no, I'm not canceling the deal. I said, of course I'm going to do this deal. I don't need you guys. And I was so determined to do it, and I was so angry, so that was that. So I said, told him, put something in writing to the lawyer, the syndication lawyer, you're out of the company, I'll give you your money back if I close the deal, blah, blah, blah. And luckily they did leave with their tail between their legs and did put something in writing to say that they have no interest in the deal or the property from now or in the future.
Good.
And I quickly thought, okay, what am I going to do now?
Well, first off, you're not going to make that mistake again.
No, exactly. I'm not going to make that mistake.
Yeah.
Someone's got to either already have a proven track record of deals closed that they've raised money
or
for.
You have a relationship with.
Yeah. So much for taking it easy.
As I always say, there are an awful lot of posers in this business. And there are a lot of people out there that go to these guru boot camps and think that it's an easy business. And I think you found out what it takes to close one of these things. It's work. If it wasn't work, everybody would be doing it. But you got to really work hard. So
it is a lot of work and a lot of hurdles. Yeah. And every day it was just after a while you just realize, hey, it's not about getting through the hurdle because there is another one the next day.
Exactly.
So it's just part of the business, and every day or every few days there was another little hurdle, and you just keep hopping over them and finding a way around it.
And every business has hurdles. So
that's it. And you just got to never give up.
All right. So your money's now hard. You got no money lined up to close the deal, and what do you do?
So I did what I should have done a month before when these guys contacted me. I hit the phones. Yeah. Which is exactly what I was about to do before these guys contacted me, and started dialing for dollars. It was not easy. I emailed out everybody on my list of people that I had met over the course of the year at various events. Not to a very resounding response. Nobody was actually sending me checks over and, wow, Steve's emailed us, let's send him $100,000.
Yeah.
It was not like that. So it was like pulling teeth. I managed to get a couple of people interested for, $100,000 and here and there. And then I was also calling, obviously, people that I thought would be bigger or, that had more money. So luckily, one of the people, again, a connection that I had met, a management company person a year before, probably around the same time I met Charlie, that I kept in touch with. She was on my list. I called her. She worked for a couple of guys that had a lot of units, and I told her what my predicament was. By this time, we're getting really late in the game now, as in I had a second deposit due on the next Monday, and this was like Wednesday, the week before, and it would have brought it up. It was a big deposit, and there's a reason why, too. I'll tell you after about the financing. But I agreed to it, and it brought the whole deposit up to $200,000 hard.
Holy cow.
Wow. Because I wanted to make sure by that time I'm going through with it.
You got ice water in your veins, Steve.
Yeah. We had 50 up and then 150 to come, and they wouldn't give in on it. So I, just like I said, I kept calling around. I had quite a few people thinking about it, a few bigger players that showed interest, but they wanted like practically the whole deal. I mean, I'm not greedy. I just wanted to do the deal for a lot of reasons, not just the money. You want to get your foot in the door. You want to be able to say, hey, I have a property now. I'm here. But at the end of the day, for all my hard work and sweat, I wasn't about to give somebody 95% of the whole entire, project for doing nothing except handing over some money. So luckily, this management said, oh, I'll get one of my guys to call you. They did. They called me in a few hours. They liked the deal. They were in that area already. They luckily had a lot of their own investors and a lot of properties. And we talked about it. They liked it. I spoke to his partner. He liked it, and they pretty much said, I needed 200 hard on Monday, and closing in within about a month. And they were like, okay, we like it. We're in. But they said there's not enough in it for us because I had another sponsor in there.
Okay, right.
And that was a very hard conversation to have, although it was sort of mutual because this sponsor, luckily, is a gentleman and, was really doing it genuinely to help me, not just for money. And I spoke to him. I told him he wanted to see me do this deal and get it done somehow, just on a personal level. So I told him I found these guys. They're going to put up the hard money on the Monday. They want to do the deal, but it's just they can sponsor if I need to as well. And he luckily said to me, I know you don't need me. I was like, well, it's not like that, but I got to get this deal done one way or the other. And he said, I'm not standing in your way. Don't worry. He goes, you didn't, you ended up, you did well. You didn't need me to even sign the note for you at the end of the day, which is amazing that you sorted out. Yeah, and I didn't put any money in the deal, so I'm stepping aside.
Yeah. That guy's a good friend. Good guy.
And he still called me all through the thing to make sure it was all going okay, and that if I needed any help or any advice, even now, I mean, he calls me every week. Make sure everything's okay. So that's a great person to find.
Exactly. Yeah. And Steve, those are the types of people you find at my meetings, right?
Yeah, that's it. It is true. You want to find genuine people. It's the same as making friends with somebody. You move to a new town. It takes a while to really know if someone's for real or not, but you got to start somewhere, and you make some friends, and you see how it goes. Yeah. And who's real and who's not. And there's a lot of not real people in this business. As a matter of fact, probably twice as many as real.
Posers.
Maybe more.
Yep. Posers. Yep.
So anyway, that freed me up to go to these guys and say, okay, this is the deal. So they were very nice about it because they could have held my hand over the fire because they knew I wanted to do this deal, and I literally was about to lose it because everybody else was and ahhing about doing the deal. And these guys just said, okay, we're doing it. And they just put up the $200,000 hard on the Monday, and that was that. And I just knew to myself, once they put down that money,
you're done.
I just went, my whole body.
Yes.
Because I thought these guys are not losing $200,000.
Right.
And we agreed, to split the management portion which was I did 60-40 for the 60% to the investors on the whole deal, cash flow and back end, and we had 40% for the management. I agreed to split it with them 3 ways.
Okay.
Fair. More than fair. I mean, in my position.
Yeah.
And they actually said to me that I should get more of the acquisition fee because I did all the work.
Okay, so how much was the acquisition fee?
Well, I don't even know how this came about, but we actually had a 5% acquisition fee, which I always thought 3 was the number, but somehow people convinced me that no, it's a great deal. 5. Okay.
Wow.
And nobody really seemed to say anything, so.
So 200,000.
That was $195,000.
Oh boy. And how much did they let you keep of that?
So I got 40%, and they got 30 each. Bearing in mind that they're not partners in a company; they have their own company, so they do stuff together or separately. So I gave them 30 each, and I had 40, which was $78,000.
So at the closing table, you got a check for $78,000.
Well, not quite.
Okay.
Not quite. That's the rest of
it.
Okay. So these guys came in, everything was great. They put the money up. They got their investors on board. We opened, opened the companies. I opened up all the bank accounts, all that kind of stuff. We changed around the property brochure to put all their details on it. All that stuff was happening really quickly. And in the middle of all this was also jumping back to the financing thing. I was coming up to now, before we went hard, to the 60-day contingency, and that's what that 200 hard was all about. So we came up to the 60-day contingency, and all I had was this 8% bridge loan, which, I guess I didn't think much of it. I just thought, well, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to not do it. But the broker, who's this guy, if you remember, who's I got friendly with, even though he works for the seller, and he said to me, that's just too much. He goes, I don't understand why you can't get cheaper. And I was like, well, so he was in contact with his seller, who is one of his regular clients too. And they thought, oh no, I guess I'm reading into this, but I'm thinking they thought, oh no, it's like 4 days till, or maybe it was a week till the 60 days, and they didn't want me to pull out. So they thought, is he going to pull out of the 60-day due diligence clause because he can only get 8% and he's not happy with that? So they spoke to the broker and said, hey, look, why don't you just tell them that we'll finance it for 6%? And I was always taught you got to ask people for owner finance, and most of the time they tell you to get lost. And they came to me and said, "Hey, how'd you like it if we were the bank?" And they offered me exactly what the bridge lender was going to give me, including the capex percentage of the capex that I needed, and the 6%, no fees, no points, no nothing. And I just was gobsmacked, I was like, what?
So they financed 100% of the, well, not 100% of the deal, but they were the entire bank. It wasn't like a second mortgage these guys were giving you.
No.
Yeah, they were putting you in first position.
For 12 months, and then
with a 6-month kicker.
6-month extension.
Okay. All right. But like you said early on, those bridge lenders are more anxious to do business with you now. So you probably shouldn't have a problem refinancing within 18 months.
No, we've had quite a few of the regular lenders that were interested in the property in the first place, but the numbers weren't there, lining up already. Yeah. So they just want us to get the fire damage units back online, get the occupancy up, which it will be once that's done. We're upgrading a lot of the units, raising the rents, changing the name, building a playground, and believe it or not, I'm doing all that within less than 6 months.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So we should be able to have no problem getting an agency loan on this, within the 12 months.
Excellent.
I hope.
Now you own the property. You guys closed on it. Now let's just wrap up that open loop here regarding your acquisition fee. Okay. What happened there?
So aside from that, I really did need the money. We're getting down to the last dregs of living here, and my big money I made was just about run out. Squeezed every penny down to the last minute. So it's not like I was in a position to oh gee, I got another year to go find another property.
Yeah.
So I was very motivated. Anyway, we closed. They didn't, to be fair, admittedly, it was a short time. They only had 2 or 3 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, to raise some money. So they've raised a good portion of the money. We only needed, I don't know if anybody knows, but when you're doing the syndication, there's a certain percentage of the money that you have to raise of your raise before you can what they call break impounds. So you're not allowed to use any investor's money that you get into the bank account until you reach a certain proportion of what the raise is, and then you're allowed to break impounds, so to speak, and use it for, well, sort of anything you want, as long as you know that you do owe it back if the deal doesn't go through. But until that point, so that was the first goal, was to get to that point, which we did.
Okay.
And then we were able to close no matter what, and it was enough to close. So we had more than enough money to close and to get started on the works, but we didn't have the full raise by the closing date, but it made no bearing on the close. It just meant that we're not getting our full acquisition fee right now, and we still have some capex to raise to do all the works that I want to finish on the property, which we wouldn't even get to for 3, 4, or 5 months from now. So,
but I mean, it may be that you guys can stop raising the money now, get this thing to be a performing asset, refinance out the bridge loan using agency paper, better, and then pull money out of the deal, and then be able to pay yourselves at that time.
Yeah. I mean, at least there's options.
Yeah.
At least all I was concerned about was we own the damn thing.
Yeah.
So that was that, and they also, again, they were really understanding. I told them I needed some money. They didn't take any of their acquisition fee, and they told me to take what you need.
Oh, that's great.
So
I
didn't want to be greedy. I took like 25 grand, and they're still getting raising the rest of the money now anyway from their investors. And,
but the property,
and I'm getting on with working on the property.
The property still owes you $53,000. Yeah, that's great. The bill.
But we only need about 350 more to actually pay ourselves and the rest of the capex. So we're not talking like mega here.
Right. But you're owed that money. That's in the deal. That's written into the deal that money is your money, and then once you get it, that you get paid first. Good for you. Good for you. So, and you're going to own about 13% of the deal. So that's not a bad payday. That's how you start building your portfolio.
Yeah, that's
bravo,
it.
Steve.
My first deal at that point, I was just happy to finally get on the ladder, and it does make a big difference, as everybody's always told me. It hasn't been like snowball effect yet, but we're getting there. I felt relieved, like all of a sudden, it used to be like when I was networking or trying to do things, or brokers, money, it was like the emperor's new clothes. I can talk the talk and get away with it, but at the end of the day, if I got found out and they said, well, what do you actually own? What's the last deal you did?
Exactly.
I just got some clothes.
Yeah. Now, but the nice thing is that these other partners are letting you use their resume to go out there and do more deals. That's how they want to work with you.
Yeah, well, that was the other strange thing that's come out of this. I guess they like me. I had luckily a few people that liked me and gave them the okay on me, which I don't even know why, because they don't really know me. But, I've made friends with them over the year, and all about relationships, and they thought I knew what I was talking about. Thought being were there, and they seemed to believe it or not, everybody was worried that they were going to take advantage of me, and I was going to be on the back burner. But in reality, they're letting me do whatever I want. I'm running the whole show, and pretty much, and getting on with things. And
but let me ask you something, Steve. That wasn't always going to be the case. You actually had somebody approach you, that was essentially going to kick you out.
Yeah, there was another person who really liked the deal, and if you want my help, and of course for a second you have to almost consider it, because not only for the money of the deal, but my reputation that I had my house of cards, in the that area and the sort of industry, my level that I was working in, would have been pretty much destroyed. Everything that I just did, like I couldn't close on this crappy little deal, but he's calling us about $10 million properties. So,
but you did it. Congratulations.
Yep. And that guy wanted 95% of the management, which would have left me with 5% of the management for all my work and probably doing all the rest of the work after.
Yeah. That's crazy. There are sharks out there out there in this business. You got to look out for them. So it sounds
Yep.
like
So these guys were fair. I brought them a deal. They acknowledged I did a lot of work, and they have a portfolio with about 2,500 units. They, gave me their resume, and just said, "Hey, go out and just use this. You don't have to say what you own or don't own. These are me and my partners, and here's our
right. That's
resume.
exactly how it works.
And I'm going to take every advantage I can of that."
Attaboy. Okay, now let's bring this in for landing. Why don't we wrap this up? And I'm just going to ask you, what what were some of the things you learned? Give me like two things that you learned in this deal. Learning about multifamily that I didn't teach you, that the due diligence seminar didn't teach you. I mean, what were some of the things that we can take away here?
Oh man, it's really hard to say what I learned. I mean, it really is again all about
Right. Yeah.
relationships. And I'm sure Charlie says this anyway, but it's all about marketing. You're always marketing. You're marketing for deals. You're marketing for
Yeah.
money. You're marketing for tenants later on.
Yeah.
It's just a marketing business,
Exactly.
numbers business. But really, I needed to get over my sort of. I'm not a shy guy, but I had this intimidation about approaching people for
Yeah.
money, and I still have to break that. You're offering them an opportunity,
Yeah.
not trying to
Taking
take
money.
their
Yeah.
pension money
Yeah.
and piss it away.
Exactly. No.
And so that's something you really need to get over. Don't trust anybody else with these important things, or you're going to be the one sitting there at the closing table with no dough in the bank. So
Yeah.
that's a major thing. And I don't know. I mean, make sure you keep an eye on every aspect of the whole thing yourself, even if you do have other people helping out. You don't just go, okay, well, you're in charge of that, so
Right.
and then expect them to just come and it's done.
Yeah. I mean, that's you heard me say that. Don't trust anybody. Get everything in writing. If somebody says something to you, put it in writing and make them sign it. That's how I did a lot of these special provisions in some of the contracts we have because a broker was acting blustery, and I took what he said, his bluster, and put it into the contract, and made him sign it. And so don't believe anything anybody says. So
Yeah, there was a few things that I did that, as you know, with the guys with the money and stuff, and it wasn't that. It was that I actually officially put them in the company, in a legal,
yeah.
and I did a lot of things like
Yeah.
that I shouldn't.
No,
I
because
shouldn't
you were
have.
anxious. You were anxious to get the deal done. You thought you needed to do
And
that.
they could have backfired on me. Of course, they could have said, "Hey,
Screw you.
okay, well, we couldn't raise the money
Exactly.
off ship, and we still own 25% of the
Yeah.
deal." So I got lucky in that one and escaped. So I learned a lot of things like
That goes to
And
what the other thing I say about hoarding your equity. Hoard your equity. That's your kids' money. Don't give it
yeah,
away. So yeah, here's my shameless plug, just to let people know. I mean, you came out to California. I'm now doing it in Boston, the end of June. If anybody wants to find out how the due diligence program works, multifamilyinvestingacademy.com/due diligence. If you're a member of my owner forum, you get a significantly reduced entry fee, and then if you're a member of my master class, you get a reduced fee, and if you're not a member of either, then you pay the street price. But this is where I taught Steve all of the intricacies of how to do a deal once you get the deal, once you start making offers. And I think this is, if anybody is thinking about this business and get to the level that you just did, Steve, you have to take this due diligence seminar. There's
yeah,
nothing
absolutely.
like it.
It's the nuts and bolts of it that you need to get into your
Yeah.
head, from someone literally telling it to you in
Yeah.
person. And you just have to never give up. That's the other thing. Just a quick one. I was telling Charlie,
Yeah.
I was literally really nervous and thinking, can I really pull this off after all that happened? And it was a really stressful time. And I knew I had to do this deal, so I thought, right, I made this sign with my kids, this big long sign that says, "Failure is not an option."
Yeah.
And then I had I have 5 and 7-year-old, and we were all coloring it in on the floor in rainbow colors. And I have this thing like a big banner across over my computer, and the whole end of this whole thing, while I was trying to get this deal done and get someone on board, I would just look at this thing and think, right, my kids helped me draw that. I explained to them what this means and what the deal means to us, and I just looked at it, and that just helped me get through. You never give up,
That's it.
no matter what.
Yeah. You're just channeling your inner Winston Churchill. That's what it was. So, Steve, hey, thank you so much for coming on line here and sharing this with you. And let me ask your permission. Your handout. your offering memorandum?
No, I'm not giving any handouts. Now that I have money, I'm
Oh
keeping
yeah,
it.
nice guy. He doesn't need you anymore. No, no, I don't mean those handouts. I mean your offering memorandum that I was just showing online here. Can I make that available to my students so they can see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, so
You can
I
say
will
everything that I
post
put
that.
into that as well, as far as all, more due diligence, which was, looking at obviously doing comps, doing
Right,
your market research on the area, jobs,
right.
everything, and that's all in there. And I that was all stuff I either stole from brokers, things, or found
Yep.
myself. So
All right, so I'll post that. And also, Steve, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, because this is a relationship business, can they contact you?
as long as they have money, they can
Yeah,
contact me anytime.
boy.
If they don't have money, they can still
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
contact me.
just yeah, he'll get put in the junk pile.
No, of course. Anybody who wants to know anything,
What's your email
I'll
address, Steve?
my email is sf for Steve Firestone, sf at crownbaygroup.com,
Great,
crownbaygroup.com.
excellent. So, all right, man. Hey, I'm so proud of you. This is great. From where you sat in the front row in Atlanta to where you are now. You did it, pal. You did it. Good
Thank
for
you.
you.
Thanks,
Oh,
Charlie.
I'm glad I could help. All right, everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks for dialing in. And this is going to be posted up on the group coaching archive momentarily. And we look forward to getting you on one of these calls. I think I have another student who's about to own a property, and within the next month, and that's going to be posted as well. So thanks, Steve. I appreciate all you've done, and we will talk soon.
great. Thanks a lot, Charlie. Speak to you.